The views and opinions expressed in this program are not meant to alarm anyone, but merely start an intelligent discussion about an interesting phenomenon. The possibility that an intelligent life form does exist and is actively making contact with the Earth.
Welcome to UFO Update Live. My name is Jerry Black. On tonight's program, we will update our Hangar 18 story with an exclusive interview with Kevin Randall, co-author of The Truth of the UFO Crash at Roswell. Kevin, along with co-author Don Schmidt, have interviewed 9 individuals who claim to have actually witnessed the crash in 1947. They said a crashed alien craft with bodies was recovered by the U.S. military and were ultimately flown to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. We also have excerpts of Kevin's talk he gave at the Zimmer Auditorium. Mr. Lance Moody, a guest skeptic, will join our panel to debate this case. He doesn't think the facts merit belief in the crash of an alien craft. So stay tuned as UFO Update presents the mystery of the UFO crash at Roswell.
So what we have is a story told to us by about 500 different witnesses. Now, not each one of those knows the entire story. In fact, I don't believe more than 1 or 2 of the people we talk to know the entire story. But each one knows a piece of it. We conducted 2,000 interviews with those 500 people to get to the point where we can make the statements we make. We know that a craft from another planet crashed in July of 1947. We know that the impact site was about 35 miles northwest of Roswell, New Mexico. We know the craft was heel-shaped, about 15 or 20 feet wide and 25 to 30 feet long. We know that there were 5 alien bodies, the pilots of the craft killed in the crash. What we do know is bodies were recovered. The bodies were taken to Roswell. They were stored there for maybe 12 to 14 hours. They were flown out. They went to Andrews Air Force Base in Washington, D.C., and then on to Ohio. And the question that is raised in my mind is, what's the big secret of Roswell? Is it possible that somehow one did survive the crash and we inadvertently killed it?
Welcome back to UFO Update Live. Remember, this is your show, so if you have any calls concerning our topic tonight about the crash of Roswell, please give us a call at 651-1221, 651-1221. I'd like to introduce our panel at this particular time. Brian Scow to my extreme left. Brian Scow is a physicist. He's also a UFO researcher and investigator. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you.
Terry. Well, I'd like to welcome you. Terry Andrus is also a teacher at CTC, I believe it is, a UFO researcher and investigator, and also an author, quite accomplished author, by the way.
Thank you.
And Pat Packard right here, closest to me. Pat Packard is president of ASK, Associates for Scientific Knowledge, also is assistant state director of the Mutual UFO Network. Welcome, gentlemen. Tonight's going to be an interesting topic. We're going to be talking about the crash at Roswell. Don Schmidt and Kevin Randall have written a book about it recently. And Pat, give us some insight as to your perception of Kevin Randall and the work he's done, and Don Schmidt also.
Well, I think they've done a very thorough job of going back and conducting interviews with over 2,000 people that have some information about the Roswell incident. And they're not all first-hand witnesses. Some of them have peripheral information, people that work for newspapers and radio stations that were threatened to be closed down or taken off the air, whatever the case may be, people that transported the debris, people that were involved in the cover-up, and people that now, as the case stands now, were actually at the scene of the crash itself, where the vehicle came down and the bodies of these aliens, as they report, were found. And these are pretty highly credible people. So far, we're not getting any other story from over 550 witnesses than the fact that it was an alien craft of some type. So, and we've got quite a few deathbed statements, sworn affidavits. I couldn't give you an exact count. I know there's 7 deathbed statements, but other than that, I can't give you an exact count on all the statements, but they're very convincing. They all seem to fit together, with some exceptions. I mean, after all these years, people's memories are not perfect. They're not perfect from day to day, so.
Yeah, we're talking 47 years.
Quite a while ago, right.
Terry, what is your perception of Mr. Kevin Randall and Don Schmidt and the background that they have to be doing this research?
Well, I had the chance to interview Mr. Randall and asked him, because he's been at this for a while. But originally he entered the case as a skeptic. And I asked him about that, and he told me that when he and Schmidt decided to get involved, they thought they'd spend just a couple days in Roswell, chase down a few leads and close the case and go home, because they were pretty well convinced that it may have been a hoax or just a misidentification of some mundane object. But it's the overall preponderance of the testimony that sort of changed their heads. Interestingly, in 1980, Kevin Randall wrote a section in Ronald Story's Encyclopedia of UFOs and basically trashed crashed saucers and alien body retrievals as being simply unsupportable, no evidence. So it's a complete turnaround as far as Kevin Randall is concerned, to be now probably the most visible and supportive investigator in crash retrievals.
Brian, you had an opportunity to meet Mr. Randall at his lecture he gave at the Zimmer Auditorium. What's your perception of the gentleman and what he had to say?
Well, one thing that strikes me about the investigation that they've done is that they've been able to uncover first-hand witnesses to the craft and to the bodies, and what they have found is that it's really not the normal alien that we usually see with abductions, and it's not the usual craft that we associate with many UFO sightings. And the fact that the direct eyewitnesses all describe very similar accounts, I think strengthens this the entire investigation and all the other stories that the secondhand stories and everything really with regards to the bodies and the craft.
So
I think
it
it make
go
it
together as far as you're concerned.
Yeah, definitely.
They seem to have done a pretty thorough job, I think. I think at this time, so that our audience knows exactly what we're talking about, I'm sure most of them do, because any place they've turned a channel in the last year or so, they've had to see something about Roswell, Unsolved Mysteries. There's a movie due out. I believe Showtime's going to have a movie this summer. But let's let the people hear Kevin Randall himself express his thoughts on the Roswell case and how he got into it and what he's found out about the Roswell situation. So let's roll that tape now of Kevin Randall explaining to us his theories about the Roswell situation.
Determined, based on our research, is that around the 1st of July 1947, radar sites in a number of locations in New Mexico spotted an object. At first they thought it might be a malfunction of the set, but sites at other locations were also reporting the object, so it was clearly something that was visible. On July 4th, while they were watching the thing on radar, the object seemed to blossom, contract, blossomed into a brilliant sunburst on the radar scope, and disappeared from the screens. They knew something was down because it never reappeared. At the same time, there was a fellow named Jim Ragsdale out in the desert with a girlfriend. They saw an object fly overhead, crash into the ground close to where they were. They went out and looked at it, saw a ship, went back to the campsite because they were scared. Next morning, archaeologists showed up, sheriff showed up, Ragsdale was back, and eventually the Army showed up. They cordoned the area, they got the archaeologists off the site, recovered the craft and the bodies, took it into Roswell. Eventually it made its way to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio. The next day, July 6th, Mac Brazel had found another area some 75 miles northwest of Roswell, a separate, distinct site with metallic debris, clearly some of the same types of material. He takes it to the Chavez County Sheriff. The sheriff calls the air base, and another group secures that area, and they clean up that debris. That's where the story has always started in the past, with Mac Brazel coming into town. What we've learned is there was an event. It's all part of a single event, but the crashed craft itself was found earlier. Then we plugged the whole thing back into the regular scenario with the press release coming out on July 8th saying they had a crash saucer. General Remy saying, no, they were made a mistake. What they have is a weather balloon, and the thing slips back into its normal mode.
Welcome back to UFO Update Live. At this particular time, I want to talk to the panel about what Kevin Randall had to say. And but before we do that, I understand we have a caller, and the name is Pat. Pat, are you there waiting? If you are, will you please tell us what your question is?
Yes, I will. Let me say first that I am a bit skeptical about the actual aliens existing, at least in particular about this crash. I was wondering if you feel that given the fairly heavy amount of coverage that seems to have been generated by this, whether the, quote, eyewitnesses are more people that just heard about it and know the story based on all the media coverage that they've seen, and is it sort of the same effect of all the people who said they were at Woodstock only because they heard so much about it, but when in fact they really weren't?
Well, first of all, there's three criteria to determine if someone is really a witness in this case. One, did he have a reason to be in Roswell at that time?
Mm-hmm.
Two, is there any documentation that he was there at that time? And three, what's his general credibility?
Mm-hmm.
These people, for the most part, Edwin Easley was head of the MPs that cordoned off the area in 1947. He's given direct testimony. Lewis Rickett was a counterintelligence officer who was on the scene at that point in time. McKenzie, which is a pseudonym, was an intelligence officer on the scene at that point in time. Curry Holden was on the scene at that point in time. He was head of the archaeological department at Texas Tech. We have a second archaeologist to verify that. Colonel Durant, Lieutenant Colonel Durant, was on the scene, and all this can be proven and documented that they were in Roswell. They had reason to be in Roswell, and we have many cases corroboratory. In fact, in all of these people, every story that everyone I've mentioned, plus a few others, we have a minimum of 2 other people that verify their testimony and can place them there, and also testify that they mentioned having been there and the alien bodies years before this became a cause celeb, or whatever you want to say. And lastly, no one's made any money out of this that I'm aware of.
Sure.
None of the first-hand witnesses, by any stretch of the imagination, have made any money. And even talking about the 33 people that handled the debris, none of these people have made any money that I'm aware of.
Right.
So all those arguments just simply don't apply. You're talking about people that are, let's say, a cut above the average person. We have several generals that are involved in this that give us testimony of various types. What you need to do is really study the character and quality of these people. And we have secondhand testimony that involves Pappy Henderson, World War II ace, involves Senator Montoya, who happened to be on the scene at that point in time. And there are 4 people to corroborate that story. So once you get into it and see that this is not based on one person's testimony,
Right.
You'll find out that it's a highly credible story and extremely well researched.
Let me ask you, do you personally think that it was beings from another planet?
Well, based on the fact that we've looked into every other possibility, in other words, there were no test pilots killed in the area at that point in time. We've got records for all the types of test vehicles that were in the air at that point in time, and none of them were tested in this particular area. Even the V-2 rocket, we can track those. And the fact that monkeys, rhesus monkeys, were first used on June 11th, 1948, and the chimpanzees were first used in 1952, we don't have any other plausible explanation other than what the first-hand witnesses are telling us. And we also have doctors that autopsied these that have given us testimony. It doesn't just rest with the people on the scene. There's 550 people that are telling this story. You know, many of them are second-hand,
Sure.
but almost all of them would stand up in a court of law as either collaborating testimony or first-hand witnesses. And as you know, that's enough to get you convicted of murder if you're a first-hand witness. So I think we've got enough witnesses of high caliber
Okay.
Almost all of them are.
All right. Thanks for your honesty.
Pat, thank you very much for your call.
All righty.
Brian, you had some question about Ragsdale and the situation, how he came about, and the circumstances that he claims that occurred during 1947 when he was on site and happened to see this object crash in Roswell.
Well, the importance of Ragsdale is really that he was the first, he and his companion Trudy Truelove were really the first to witness the craft. But what really bugs me about it is the fact that it was about 11:30 p.m. They went to the crash site, and they could see a craft sticking into the side of the cliff, and they even said that they thought that they had seen bodies, and yet they left the site and then went back the next morning. It just seems, I guess it's really not a problem with the case. I just have a problem with the way that with the way that he handled it, because I would think it would be human nature to go help. First of all, he didn't know that it was a alien craft of any sorts, and you've got to look at the time period here. We're talking about one of the most patriotic periods in U.S. history, with World War II just being over, and certainly with New Mexico, you've got Los Alamos, you've got Roswell, you've got White Sands, all sorts of military installations. So that would have been the first thing to come to mind, and I would have thought if that would have been a U.S. serviceman and his plane that had just crashed, that you would have immediately gone and helped instead of leave the scene and then come back in the next morning.
I understand the young lady who was there has since passed away, isn't that correct?
Yeah.
And so she is no longer able to testify in his behalf. Is there any way, do you think, he could have found out any information, Brian, that he is related, that other people seem to have related also about the crash site, which seemed to tend to make you feel like he really was there, okay? Because he seems to agree with other people who have claimed to have seen the dead bodies, and his description matches.
Well, right, and the fact he said when they went back the next morning that the military was in fact there, and the archaeologists were also at the site, so he did describe that. So I don't see any reason why he'd be lying, and especially if he were lying, I don't think I would say that I left the scene if I had witnessed that.
Right.
But you have to understand, independently, there are 4 or 5 people in his own family that he told this story to years before, and we can't account for all of human nature. I don't know why, or if you heard the story from somewhere else, or why he wouldn't go down there. But I think you make a mistake in saying that he saw the bodies. He saw the crash.
But he did say he thought he saw.
He was not the greatest witness, by the way. He was with another man's wife. He was drinking at the time. He had a flashlight whose batteries were failing, and he didn't make very good decisions.
Right, but he did say that he thought he saw bodies, which...
I don't recall that. Maybe.
I thought he did say that.
Yeah, he thought he saw bodies, and the fact that there is a craft there, I mean, you would assume that there were bodies.
I agree. It's
But again, that, like you said, that you can't judge how a person is going to react to a certain situation.
Well, the reaction to the event is actually not germane to the actual observation anyway. So, we can worry about his ethical and moral behavior, but that's a personal problem for him,
right.
And it really doesn't have much impact on the case as a whole.
Right.
Not only do his family members corroborate his story, but also the facts that he gives, and some of them are not made public, by the way, after talking to the authors, are confirmed by the other witnesses and by the fact that some facts are withheld, and he knows these facts. So how else would he know them? Someone could have given them to him, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
But
One of the things I have a problem with, panel, on this situation is the nurse who was on the base, as I understand, according to the testimony, and according to the book, as I've read it just recently, in the beginning, states that she was in the base, walking down a corridor, and someone grabbed her and says, "Hey, come in here. We can use you." I'm not saying it's an exact quote, but pretty much
right.
Correct. And so my problem is if they were so careful, if this was a crashed UFO with dead bodies, to send the bodies out on 2 separate crafts, to change all the documentation so there would be no trail for anyone to follow, as there seems to be right now, no trail. Why would they allow someone and bring someone in by the arm just out of the blue into this situation, knowing that she would just be another civilian witness?
Well, again, we're talking about behavior, and that's sometimes not as predictable as we'd like it to be. In a stress situation like that, it's hard to account for what people do. A doctor or an officer who sees the nurse walking down the hall may need someone at that instant, and the importance of the event at that instant supersedes any other considerations as far as dragging another civilian into the case. That can always be dealt with later. Whether it is or not is immaterial.
She was an Army nurse, so she wasn't a civilian, but she was in the hospital at that point in time, so she was going to have to be debriefed and everything else anyway. She probably would have had some type of secondary knowledge about what was going on. There's no accounting for every little fact and detail. Why they would call her, I really don't know. It's just one of those things that we'll probably never have an adequate answer for unless we can find the nurse. So.
What about one of the witnesses that claimed to have seen an alien actually being led in to the hospital? How credible, Pat, really is that?
Well,
witness?
that was a painter by the name of Roy Musser, and there's a couple other people that have made statements akin to that. There's no corroborating testimony for Roy Musser in particular, or any of the others, so at this point, I don't put any credibility in it. Unless we have corroboration and we have people of the character of Edwin Easley or people that or Colonel Durand or people like that, and we can have corroboration and so forth and so on. We just don't have that with Mr. Musser, so at this point, I personally don't put anything into it at all until we find other people to verify it that are above reproach, that meet all the three categories I mentioned earlier. So.
We mentioned about Hangar 18 in the opening here, and of course that's very important to people around here because Dayton, Ohio is just right up the road here a little bit north. Doesn't it seem that all the testimony seems to indicate, no matter which witness we talk about, second, first, or third hand, that the bodies eventually, whether they went directly to or not, and I think there's some question there, maybe one dropped off someplace first, but didn't they eventually go to Wright-Patterson? Isn't that the basic 100% consensus, or is there any deviation from that at all?
Well, that's the logical choice because at the time, Wright-Pat was the home for the Air Technical Intelligence Center, and any kind of foreign craft, whether it be Russian or extraterrestrial, would have been sent there for reverse engineering to find out what really went into making it fly or whether we could use anything for our own defense purposes. So the logical choice of sending it there is clear. And by the way, there is not exactly a Hangar 18, there's a Building 18, and it's a refrigeration unit, which was used to test cold starts on jet engines that might be used in the Aleutian Islands, might not. But it also becomes an interesting place since it's a deep freeze to, if you want to pick a place up there to store something, I guess, a side of beef is one thing, but an alien carcass is another.
Right. As I understand, we've all heard stories about Hangar 18 or buildings underground, sometimes going as deep as 4 stories. In fact, I had the opportunity to talk to someone who said their father was the fire chief at that time back in the late 40s and early 50s, and he was summoned to the base and told that if there ever was a fire at this location where they were pointing, to just let the fire go and let the whole thing burn up, not to attempt to enter it. So we've all had these stories come to us about Hangar 18, and that would definitely tie in with this. In other words, it certainly adds to the situation in Roswell if this really did happen.
Carl Day, there is an underground complex at Wright-Patterson. Carl Day was in it here recently from Channel 2 in Dayton. That's not unusual for any military base. I would consider it out of the ordinary. Almost all of them have underground because of the nuclear threat that we were facing after World War II. I don't put any special credence in the fact that you have an underground system there. It doesn't prove anything by itself. As far as Hangar 18, we have a wealth of stories. Lynn Stringfield, and I've unearthed a few, and so has probably everybody else, about people who have worked at Wright-Patterson, and they've told us consistently the same story through the years, that there were alien bodies there. And get back to Charles Wilhelm, who probably started the whole thing in 1958.
Right.
When he had the secretary there who was dying of cancer, gave him a statement. and other, so we've got plenty of information other than the Roswell testimonies, which, yes, all it seems to point that at least the materials went to Wright-Patterson. Some people say some of the flights were diverted to Andrews Air Force Base so that Eisenhower could see the bodies, and some of the flights may have gone to Los Alamos. So we don't know exactly. We know some of the bodies, it seems like some of the bodies ended up at Wright-Patterson. We're pretty sure the debris did.
Okay. Panel, I think we have a caller out there. JC, you're on UFO Update. What is your question, please?
Speaking, Mr. Black. Can you hear me, sir?
Certainly can, sir. Go right ahead.
I'm going to mention two names, and then you'll know the third one. Louise Smith, Jeanette Thomas, down Kentucky. There was three of them, I believe, in 1974. They saw this UFO, and you were down there and talked to Louise Smith and Jeanette Thomas. The other lady has since passed away. I have a sworn affidavit from her. She was under hypnosis. And of all the things that happened to her, it happened around Stanford, Kentucky, and around Houstonville. Am I getting through to you? Do you remember?
Yes, you're definitely correct. You're mistaking in the names. You have the names turned around. Elaine Thomas has passed away.
Right.
Mona Stafford is still alive, and you didn't mention her. She was the youngest.
Right.
And then
you're correct. You got me right.
Louise Smith, and the year was 1976.
76. Well, I'm lucky to come in within 4 years, sir.
Well, I think I've talked to you before.
Yes, we did.
And I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your comments about this, and that was a very unusual case.
There's no doubt in my mind Louise Smith is a very intelligent lady. She doesn't have this much education, but 4 ton of common sense. Mm-hmm. And she and I talked about this one night. And if you talk with her and you don't believe she saw something, then you're in big time trouble.
Well, I consider this one of my the privilege to investigate the case, first of all, and I consider it one of the best cases I've had the opportunity and pleasure to investigate. The women were very convincing. They agreed to do everything we asked them to. They took polygraph tests, went through hypnosis sessions, 2 of them. So I appreciate your comments on that very much, sir.
It's my pleasure talking with you, Jerry, but I keep in contact with Louise all the time. She's still living and is in very bad shape.
I understand, because she's had some heart attacks.
Right.
Right. And
I'll be talking to her in the next couple of days. But, Jerry, it's always my pleasure to talk with you.
It's my pleasure to talk to you. And would you please give me a call in a few days and let me know how she's doing, seriously. And we'll be giving our number out later in the show.
And I'm thanking you, sir.
Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure. Bye.
Terry, we have an interesting audio tape here that we'd like to play now for our viewers. Can you set it up for us?
Right. One of the peripheral witnesses to the Roswell events was Huey Green, who was an officer in the Canadian Air Force in World War II. After World War II, he became an entertainer and was driving through New Mexico at the time of the incident and picked up several radio broadcasts that detailed the early stages of the military's involvement with the crash, and that's what we're going to hear here.
That's interesting. Let's roll that audio tape right now, please.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection. Late this afternoon, a bulletin from New Mexico suggested that the widely publicized mystery of the flying saucers may soon be solved. Army Air Force officers reported that one of the strange discs had been found and inspected sometime last week. Our correspondents in Los Angeles and Chicago have been in contact with Army officials endeavoring to obtain all possible late information. Joe Wilson reports to us now from Chicago.
The Army may be getting to the bottom of all this talk about the so-called flying saucer. As a matter of fact, the 509th Atomic Bomb Group headquarters at Roswell, New Mexico, reports that it has received one of the discs which landed on a ranch outside Roswell. The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico, and the rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brizzell was the man who discovered the saucer. Colonel William Blanchard of the Roswell Air Base refuses to give details of what the flying disc looks like. In Fort Worth, Texas, where the object was first sent, Brigadier General Roger Ramey says that it is being shipped by air to the AAF Research Center at Wright Field, Ohio. A few moments ago, I talked to officials at Wright Field, and they declared that they expect the so-called flying saucer to be delivered there, but that it hasn't arrived as yet. In the meantime, General Ramey describes the object as being of flimsy construction, almost like a box kite. He says that it was so battered that he was unable to determine whether it had a disc form, and he does not indicate its size. Ramey says that so far as can be determined, no one saw the object in the air, and he describes it as being made of some sort of tinfoil. Other Army officials say that further information indicates that the object had a diameter of about 20 to 25 feet, and that nothing in the apparent construction indicated any capacity for speed, and that there was no evidence of a power plant. The disc also appeared too flimsy to carry a man. Now, back to Taylor Grant in New York.
That was a very interesting tape, panel. Very interesting tape. Thank you very much for that, Terry. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
I want to welcome everyone back to UFO Update Live. Don't forget, we're accepting your calls. If you have any call concerning Roswell, at 651-1221. It is my pleasure now to introduce our guest this evening, guest panelist, and that's Mr. Lance Moody. Mr. Lance Moody is a TV editor, but he is also a skeptic. He has some problems here with this Roswell case, and I'll have to admit to you, Lance, I've had some questions about it. I think everyone on the panel has a question or two concerning some of the events and how they happened and whether that was the way it really should have been or could have been or whatever. But let's hear, what are some of your problems that you have with this case?
Well, the biggest problem is the complete lack of physical evidence. For an extraordinary claim like this, what I would look for as a skeptic would be physical evidence to support the claim. As we've mentioned here, we mentioned a lot of testimony that's available, but unfortunately no physical evidence really at all. Some of the documents from the period as well seem to indicate quite the reverse of the idea that they found a flying saucer. For instance, General Twining's, or excuse me, Lieutenant General Twining's letter to the Air Force Command, in which Twining did support the idea of UFOs being a real phenomenon worthy of study. And this is embraced by the UFO community. But there was also a very clear paragraph in there in which he stated, after the events that happened in Roswell, that the government did not have a flying saucer or any sort of flying saucer debris. This was a classified document. There would have been little reason, it seems to me, for him to lie in this document to his commander. Yet here he clearly says that there was no flying saucer debris. It's that to me is a huge hole in the case, as well as there's some technical details about the case and things that bother me, similar to the things that other people have mentioned here, Brian.
Don't you feel it's kind of hard to have physical evidence? I mean, you're asking for an actual body, basically. And that's almost an impossibility. If this did occur, and I think I obviously have to lean towards the fact that I feel it did occur, but even on that basis, what's the probability of anyone getting one of the alien bodies if they existed? I mean, I think you're asking too much when you ask for physical proof. I think we have to look at the overwhelming amount of evidence, and I think, everyone's taking a look at that. But I think you bring up some interesting points, General Twining's situation, but don't you agree that it's pretty difficult to have physical evidence involved in this situation? I mean, if we did, it would be on all the networks, period. If someone could produce a body, am I correct?
If the idea of this government conspiracy to cover up this crash is true, yes, you'd have trouble finding it. But it's because it's such an extraordinary claim that I personally require more evidence in order to support this claim.
Well, I agree with you 100%. That's why I've told people throughout the years that it's not like we're talking about the Iran situation and stuff when we talk about a secret like President Reagan did there when he was dealing with the Iran-Contras. This thing here that we're talking about is so huge and would change our society so much. It would be the story not only of the century but of all times. So it does demand, just in itself, the way it's presented, it does demand the ultimate proof, and that is a body. And I agree with you 100%. You could have a UFO crash on your property, and no one's going to believe it's a UFO. They'll say it was experimental craft if there's no bodies involved.
I can mention also the fact that in looking through UFO reports and UFO stories since the 50s, there have been at least 4 other crash saucer hoaxes, now acknowledged as hoaxes, these reports. For instance, one of the reports, the Aurora, Texas airship crash, was supported by MUFON, now clearly exposed as a hoax. So and that case had witnesses, had support, not as much support as this case. This case is unusual in how many people have supported, but still, that's not enough for me. It's not enough for most skeptics, just the testimony. What we look for is some evidence. This GAO investigation, the Government Accounting Office, who's investigating the case now, hopefully they will uncover some documents that will say one way or the other as to what actually happened here. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be able to end the debate because I think we all know sitting here that the Government Accounting Office is not going to return a report saying that the government has flying saucers. So for that reason, I'm skeptical even of this report doing any good. You know,
Right.
It's not going to end the debate.
Right.
Panel, he's brought up some good points.
Sure.
How do we address a person like this? And you have to remember, he's coming from a logical point of view.
Sure.
We don't
It's,
have any physical evidence. So how do we address Mr. Moody's questions here?
Let's take the documentation, for example. First of all, the first document that comes to mind is a report from the FBI field office who they listened in on telephonic communications from Roswell, and the first thing that they said was the telephonic communications do not support the idea that this was a crashed weather balloon. Secondly, there's an estimate of the situation beginning July 30th that supports the idea that these are in fact real craft. Third, when the Twining memo came out, it was classified secret. Everyone would have access, if you're in the military, to a secret memo. But it was in direct answer to General Shulgren, what are we doing about this? And they answer specifically the questions that he asked. If they would have answered something that would have been top secret, it wouldn't have been appropriate, it would have been classified as top secret. They were answering specifically the things that he asked. Third, on October, I think it's the 28th,
yeah.
there's another memo for all the intelligence agencies in the entire world, basically, to collect information. And in that memo, it indicates that they pretty much know things that they couldn't know from distant observation. What the craft were made of, how the doors opened, what type of landing pod system they had, and some other things that somewhere that information came in. And the only observations they had were from great distances at that point in time. So it indicates they knew a lot more than they were letting on. So, you know, as far as that, we also have information that at that point in time there was a project going on that was top secret at investigating UFOs. Of course, the government denied it. They denied that there was any top secret investigation going on since then or after Project Blue Book, but we have documentation that it has been going on ever since Blue Book and going on even up to today. So the question is, why investigate something that doesn't exist, and why continue until 1994? So, you know, most of these documents have come out since 1985, by the way. These are not things that would, if they would have come out in 1947, 48, 52, when they were first published, it would have put an entirely different face on the discussion we're having today. I agree with Lance. It would be nice to have, and we should have, in order to prove the case, some physical evidence. But that's what this debate is really about. We don't have it. They went to great lengths to clean up the site. They used industrial vacuums and all kinds of things. They've gone to great lengths to recover debris. As if you look at Marcel's son, who picked debris up a couple years later, they come and take it from him on the farm, according to him and according to several others. But the point to me is that I think, as opposed to the GAO investigation, which I hope the best for, but we all know that the documents have been altered and that the trail's been covered. So yeah, we're not going to get very far in that respect. But I would say, and I still say, the best way to get to the bottom of this is have a congressional hearing, bring the witnesses out that are still alive, bring out the evidence that's still there, and have the American public or anyone tell us that we don't have enough credible people. And as a point of fact, as we've investigated things like the Aurora and others, the problems with them, they collapsed. And internally they collapsed from the UFO community, as well as skeptics providing information. This case is the exact opposite. As we've investigated more and more, we found more and more people that are going along with this story, that are collaborating, or not collaborating, but corroborating is the right word, this particular story. And they're not people that are, what do I want to say, on the lower echelons of credibility. They're on the upper echelons. General Exine testifies that it came into Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So forth and so on. So we have a number of people of high credibility that are testifying in this case, and the people that have been on the sites, the people that have handled the material, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's a consistency to their testimony. If you look at this, take it this way, there's 17,000 people in Roswell in 1947, including the people on the air base. We'd assume that 500 of these people are liars. I mean, that's, I find that hard to believe.
We got a call.
I'm not saying that you're calling them liars, but I'm saying, that would be the gist of it, and I would say we would be able to convict anyone in the country of murder based on one or two of these people's testimony. So,
Panel, we have a caller right now. Don, you're on UFO Update. Please give us your question.
Good evening, gentlemen. How are you today?
Fine. How are you, Don?
Question for you. I want to ask you something or tell you something. I have a friend that lives in Waco, Texas, and I talk to him all the time. We've known each other for years. And he was telling me, I was telling him about the program, and I tape it and send it to him all the time. I hope you guys don't mind. But he said there is an unusual high amount of UFO activity in the state of Texas. And I was wondering, is there any way you can let me know more about that? Is that true? I mean, are we? What's going on?
Well, I do know there's a area of Texas called Marfa, Texas, and they have what is called the Marfa Lights, which have been observed for quite some time, really decades actually, and what they think that might be are a new thing that's called Earth Lights, which might be a result of geomagnetic activity. They see these type of lights. They usually occur with earthquakes and even with volcanic eruptions. It's little is known about it, but that is the leading theory as far as the Marfa Lights are concerned. However, I myself, I'm not familiar with any other sightings going on in Texas right now.
Well, he was telling me more that there's he does a lot of deep sea fishing, and there is an extremely amount, or a high amount, should I say, off the coast of Texas, Galveston area. He said there's about a 100-mile stretch here, and it's a common thing to all the people down there. He said he realized there's a test base down there with the Air Force. But he said some of the things, him being an ex-military person, he said, I know doggone well none of them craft can move like this, He said, because they just sit there one day on a boat, one evening, and he said, they were just flying around like, fireflies.
Back some 40 years ago, we had one of our most famous cases was in Texas, in Lubbock, Texas, when we had this object, Don, that was sitting on the roadway, and I think it was viewed by anywhere from 13 to 16 people.
That was Levelland, Texas.
Levelland, Texas?
Yeah.
Okay, Levelland, Texas, pardon me. And there was about 13 to 16 people who I think viewed this object sitting on the roadway, called into the police. They could almost follow it.
Right.
Okay. All the way up the highway.
Over a period of several hours, in fact.
Right. People were calling in a state of panic practically most of the time, stating they'd seen this object that landed on the highway right in front of them.
Right, and along with the close encounter, many of the witnesses reported their engines stalling out, the typical electromagnetic effects that seem to be associated with close encounter UFO reports.
Well, he told me that you gentlemen might want to look into some of the people that work on the oil platforms down there, that they have some bizarre tapings that you might try to get hold of them.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
We appreciate the information. Thanks for your call, Don.
Thank you.
Mr. Moody, you have any other comments we'd like to hear some more comments you might have concerning your skepticism?
Well, you mentioned the FBI teletype, and I don't think the FBI teletype is that clear cut as to what they're saying there. This FBI teletype was sent up here to Cincinnati, obviously, to the FBI office. And it's not clear whether they're saying that. It's almost very tentative as to what they're actually suggesting there. I don't think it's quite as clear-cut as you presented it, Pat.
Well, but don't they say that telephonic communications do not support the idea that it's a weather balloon? I think it's almost a direct quote. So all they're saying is it was not a weather balloon, and according to what they've been able to
discern at the time.
Right.
Yeah, at the time, I might just mention what I think happened.
Let me interject this, and then because I let the Hoover memo, which is dated July 11th, somewhere in 1947, where he says, I would go along with doing an examination, paraphrasing here, of UFOs, but the Army got these crash discs and would not share them with us. Now we know it wasn't the Louisiana case because the FBI was involved in the recovery of those. So we don't know exactly what he's talking about, but the time frame is interesting, and the fact that Tolson, who's a famous guy, I think from the Watergate era, actually said, "I think we should do this," and signs off on the memo. But go ahead.
Here, this is the same. This is a problem that you and I have had on the phone as well. It's the way we look at evidence, and it's sort of like looking at a glass half full or half empty. I've seen that memo as well, and to me, again, it suggests maybe the FBI wanted to be more involved in UFO cases when they came up. At the time, man, everybody was interested in UFO cases. It was a national sensation. We're talking about 2 or 3 weeks after the very first of the modern UFO reports. So there was huge interest in this case, and that's why I believe that what happened was the Army Air Force, particularly Marcel, became overly excited about this find, this debris that was found by Brazel, and he overreacted, and the Blanchard issued everyone overreacted, and they issued this press release and so forth. And then they may have well tried to cover it up.
Well, let me just answer that. First of all, Marcel was trained in weather and radar observations. He would have recognized the balloon. Secondly, the person that, the weather officer, whose name escapes me, released thousands of raw wind balloons before the invasion of Okinawa, something he would have been well aware of. Thirdly, a raw wind balloon fits in a suitcase. This thing had a debris field of several hundred yards.
Yes.
And fourthly, there's a second site where there's actually a craft in bodies. And not only that, it was tracked on radar, and we know that from 3 separate radars. So, you know, I still go back to the Hoover memo and say it refers directly to crash saucers, and someone's got them, and they won't share them with the FBI.
Plus,
that part of it is, you can't, that's in black and white. So, yeah, I agree, there's plenty of gray areas. I mean, there's plenty of problems in all of this. I guess my contention is different from yours, is I think it's well worth a serious investigation, and you know, I think the Roswell incident points that out. It's a mystery to be solved, and if it's not a UFO with alien bodies, it would be mystifying to me what could have fooled these people all these years, and I'm dying to know what it could have been. Especially as highly trained as they were. Marcel was an air materials man to boot, along with some of these other people. So,
gentlemen, I hate to interrupt you at this particular time, but we do have another caller. Tim, welcome to UFO Update. What is your question, please?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
I guess my question is why does it always seem that, I mean, in this day and age of population density and growing population, I mean, you're starting to get fewer and fewer rural areas. How come it seems that whenever any of these crashes take place, that, you know, one hasn't taken place in the middle of New York City, they always seem to be someplace way out in the boonies where nobody seems to be around at the time, or you know, there's just a few witnesses. Doesn't it seem a little strange that there hasn't been anything, a crash site that in downtown Phoenix or on the outskirts of Cincinnati or something like that?
Well, let's just say we should be thankful there hasn't been, because I'm sure it could have made a mess of things. What we do, you know, we can say is that quite a few of the, as Lance has pointed out, quite a few of the subsequent crashes that we've heard about have just not panned out to have much substantiation. So there really haven't been that many crashes. It's not like they're falling out of the sky like flies. So we have to sort of stand back and say, well, they're not crashing at an incredible rate. Nevertheless, we also seem to see that a lot of these crashes aren't too far away from military bases anyway. Military bases being purposely set in remote areas for whatever reasons, and I think it's a question of doing a little research on your own and finding the credible information, so that we don't jump to those types of conclusions that why does it seem things are always happening in remote places when in fact not that many things are really happening.
Okay, do I have time for one more quick question?
One quick one, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Another thing that's always bothered me is you see a lot of the photos and footage of UFOs, and one thing that's always seemed to bother me, I was looking for an explanation, you never seem to see like a standardization of craft. Something, you know, you never see the the same UFO. It's always one's got a slightly different shape. One looks like this, one looks like that, and doesn't it seem plausible that an intelligent race, you'd have like a standard issue, or at least a series of different craft.
Why?
Instead of it always being different each time.
Well, I think
Why is that?
We have helicopters, we have various types of propeller-driven planes that the military still uses some of those, different types of missiles if you want to go that far afield, different types of jets. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of difference. So why would they have a standardized vehicle? They probably have vehicles that would perform various jobs,
Sure.
or be designed to be carried on various craft or whatever. I really don't know.
We have to also be careful when we try to figure out why things don't add up to us, and that's the problem. Just because they don't add up to us doesn't make them false. Our expectations are based on our own experiences. We have no idea what kind of technological stepladder an alien race has taken. So we can't really determine any kind of authenticity in UFO photos simply because we see a variety of shapes and sizes.
Okay.
Mr. Moody had a comment here, Tim, to give you.
Well, the fact is that anytime you see a UFO photograph that shows structure of any sort, it's almost certainly a hoax. There's only a handful of UFO photographs that are accepted by the UFO community as being real or being authentic. Furthermore, the lack of good video of these structured craft is a damning indictment of the whole UFO idea, in my opinion. We have clear evidence of airline crashes. We have clear evidence of all sorts of very rare occurrences, meteors, for instance. And yet, this highly, this very regular sort of phenomenon, we have no good video on, and it's this lack of video that, as the years wear on, becomes more and more of an indictment against the idea of UFOs.
Well, I think an answer to that.
There are quite a few videos that have
in the past years. Yeah,
we do have a lot of
again, I don't
new
know
video.
I haven't seen them, but we do have people that say that they have them, and they're photo analysts. I haven't seen them. I've talked to them on the phone, the people that analyze them, whatever.
I think it's a two-way street.
And there's 51.
We do have a lot better. We do have a lot better video.
With structure is what I was mentioning.
With daylight photographs with structure that are past the latest computer enhancements. That doesn't necessarily mean we'll find some tomorrow.
No, because I know some of the ones that are accepted have problems with just the story of their
But we do have a lot of them, but I think the point to be made here is that on photos, at least in my opinion, and other photographic people's opinion, and I'm not a photographic person myself, is that it's almost impossible to detect a hoax nowadays because the technology in photography has gotten so great.
That's why I specifically mentioned video.
Right. Video is a little bit different.
It's still the only thing left now. Photographs mean nothing.
I agree with that 100%. Gentlemen, I got a couple announcements I have to make here to our audience. I want to thank, first of all, everyone for watching us the past 5 or 6 months. I guess as everyone realizes, we've been coming to you on a regular basis now, the first Friday of every month at 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock. And we want to thank you for watching this. The only thing is, we're going to be taking a slight vacation during the summer, and we're not going to be returning to you live, that is, until September the 3rd. We will be back September the 3rd live, 8 to 9 o'clock. But during the summer, check your public access schedules, and we will be having some tapes that we will be showing during the summer that most of you should be able to pick up and watch during the summertime. So again, thank you for watching UFO Update Live for these past 5 or 6 months. Also, Terry Enders has a lot of copies of the Volume 3 newsletter of the abduction scenario. And if you need one, just call Terry Enders at 941-6912, 941-6912, and he'll be happy to give you his address. And if you'll send him a self-addressed envelope, he'll see that you get that Volume 3. Also, in 4 weeks or so, he will have an 8-page volume, a new newsletter, UFO Update newsletter, that he will be supplying to people. So keep that in mind also, and in 4 or 5 weeks, maybe give Terry a call, see how he's coming with that, and he'll be happy if you send him a self-addressed envelope to send that to you also. And please don't forget, finally, that my wife Peggy, while she's not here this evening, she couldn't be with us this evening, she will be back in September. But just don't forget, her next UFO support group that she's been doing now for about 4 or 5 times now will be on June 14th at the Milford Library at 6:30 to 8:45. So be sure and catch that also. If you've had a UFO sighting, having a hard time dealing with it, or just want to express a UFO sighting in the confines of people who understand what you've seen, and you're not going to be ridiculed, and you don't even have to talk about your story if you don't want to. Just listen to everyone else's story. It's an interesting opportunity for you to get out your story and not be ridiculed by people and hear other people who have similar stories. So we think that's fascinating. Real quickly, panel, as we're running out of time, a real quick comment from everyone. Mr. Moody, you're our guest. Give us your finalization of what you think about Roswell in about 15 to 20 seconds, if you could.
Well, I think I was pretty clear on the idea of there not being enough evidence to support it. This GAO investigation, I wish that would be enough for the UFO community, but I know that it's not going to be enough. Okay. And so I think the controversy is going to go on forever. We'll be sitting here 25 years from now talking about UFOs. I don't think there'll ever be a resolution of that. Okay. And I wanted to mention this book. It's called Watch the Skies. It's from the Smithsonian Institution.
Okay.
And it's a great history of UFOs, and if you're interested in UFOs from a skeptical viewpoint, quite a good book.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate you coming here this evening. Thank you very much. Brian, give us your quick analysis of Roswell.
In my opinion, I feel that it definitely wasn't a weather balloon. And if it wasn't a weather balloon, then what was it? And I feel that the government, they should come forward with it. I don't see any reason why they shouldn't, now that they're coming forward with all the radiation experiments they've done with humans and what went on as far as the atomic bombs development and everything. They're pretty open with that, but I definitely don't think it was a weather balloon, and I do lead towards the alien hypothesis.
Okay. Terry?
Well, Schmidt and Randall have pretty well eliminated all the reasonable conventional explanations, so what's left, I mean, I'm sort of painted into a corner as far as that's concerned, and you almost have to at least consider that something very extraordinary did happen.
Pat, give us a quick analysis of your opinion.
I would stick to my personal theory that we have enough eyewitness accounts, sworn testimonies to convict someone of murder or whatever else, and that's evidence in and of itself about every state in the Union. We don't have the physical pieces of it. The trail has been covered up. We know that documentary-wise from the very beginning. I don't have much faith in the GAO investigation. I would hope that people would write their congressman and ask for an open hearing on this, and possibly, if that happened, we'd get to the truth.
Okay.
I think it's interesting. We don't have any documents. The National Archives don't have them now, yet we have documents about every single other thing that happened in the 40s and 50s. So that's telling in and of itself.
Okay. My opinion is I think it's a very good chance that there were extraterrestrials involved in Roswell. However, I would like to see a tighter situation develop with the first-hand witnesses, some polygraph tests used on maybe 3 of these witnesses to kind of tighten this thing, and it would help the book and it would help ufology in general. So with that, I want to thank everyone on the panel. Thank you for all being here this evening. Thank everyone. Don't forget, now this summer we're still available. Pat, you can contact Pat at 860-4250. You can contact Peggy and myself at 625-2613 with any sightings or any reports that you might have. So feel free to contact us throughout the summer. Terry also at 941-6912, because we're still going to be around to help you with any UFO problem or UFO question or UFO sighting that you might have. So thank you for watching tonight. UFO Update Live.